Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Pop Rant Radio, the podcast where two pop culture junkies discuss popular and sometimes not so popular culture. My name is Moss. I'm one of your hosts, and with me, as always, is my good friend and co host, Eric. How are you today, sir?
You know what I just realized?
What?
Why don't you put the intro on your computer?
No, I want to record it like every single time.
No, I know, but why don't you put the intro like written on your computer?
Oh.
Like on a note.
I don't know. Well, I mean, at this point, I've got it memorized, so...
Right, but there was that moment of panic in the last recording. I was like, oh no.
So, we watched Star Wars. Nope. We
Oh,
watched Rogue One, a
Is that what
Star
we're supposed to
Wars
watch?
story.
I watched Nocturnal Animals.
Well, that's good for you. Was that any good?
Eh,
All right. It looked kind of cool, looked interesting.
here you go. 5-second Nocturnal Animals. The trailer is garbage. It has, the trailer's a complete lie.
Oh, okay.
The trailer makes it look like it's like a suspenseful horror film.
Right.
It's not.
Well, it looked like a thriller, at least.
No,
Okay.
there's no thriller. There's one jump scare, and it doesn't make sense.
Well, that's
And
disappointing.
it looks like a witch. And I was the only one in the theater.
So we watched Rogue One, a
Yes,
Star Wars
eventually.
story, and I did not like this movie.
I thought it was fine. I enjoyed it for the most part. I see its shortcomings, but
We'll get into it in detail. We'll do our best to do non-spoilers first. And,
spoiler is they get the Death Star plans.
right, so,
Which, total bummer about that I didn't realize until after I saw it. That makes Shadows of the Empire not canon anymore.
yeah, well, Shadows of the Empire hasn't been canon.
Yeah, since George
Like-
Lucas said so.
Well,
but
Dark Forces. Dark Forces is specifically about the original Death Star
I thought you
plans
got
heist.
in
No, Shadows of the Empire takes place in between Empire and Return of the Jedi.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But it's the same character, though, isn't it?
No, it's Kyle Katarn. In Shadows of the Empire, it's Dash Rendar.
That's right.
I'm dropping expanded universe knowledge on you.
I haven't played Shadows of the Empire in a long time.
It's all good. It doesn't
All I remember
matter.
is that IG-88 is in it.
IG-88. He's
And
a
he's the
bitch.
worst thing in the whole game.
So, Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Essentially, it is about the crew of rebels that go steal the plans from the Death Star.
Are they rebels this time?
Sure, whatever. We'll get into that.
Are they the Resistance?
Oh,
Are they the Republic?
the Resistance.
Are they agitators?
We're going to get into that.
Are
Don't
they the
worry.
Irishmen?
So they get the plans of the Death Star that eventually Princess Leia puts in R2-D2, and they eventually get at the end of the New Hope. A New Hope. Man, I'm doing real well
The
right
beginning
now.
of A New Hope.
The beginning of A New Hope, and use it to blow up the Death Star. Yay, woo!
Right, which this kind of retcons all those jokes about, man, the guy who built this Death Star was a real dummy for leaving that port open.
Yeah, which that's fine. Whatever. I don't care about that.
It's just we don't have to hear that joke anymore.
Yeah. So our main character kind of is Jyn Erso,
Blandy,
played by
bland actress.
Felicia.
Felicity Jones.
That's what I said.
Felicia Day.
Felicity Jones, and Mads Mikkelsen's in this movie as her father.
Right. Horribly underused.
Forrest Whitaker is in this movie.
Right, because this is the sequel to Arrival.
So
This is where he goes after everything happens.
the things that I really liked about this movie, because it's not much, to be honest with you. I like the cast.
Okay.
I don't like any of the characters. I like the cast. This is why. Star Wars, it's really important. This is a total side note. It's really important for kids of all like races and
I
ethnicities
disagree with
and
you.
backgrounds to have heroes in movies, because for a really, really, really long time now, all big pop culture movies, Star Wars and Indiana Jones and Harry Potter, to a slightly lesser extent, but like it's a lot of white kids, or it's a lot of white
Wow.
guys and white heroes.
Racism.
And I like that this movie, all of the characters are like multicultural and of different ethnicities, but that doesn't matter. Like
Right.
any of these characters could have been any race or any ethnicity, and I like that they are using a franchise as big as Star Wars to give actors who aren't necessarily A-list, who aren't well known, but are of different ethnicities, a chance to star in a big, huge movie.
Even if they did still cast a pretty big white woman as the
But at
lead.
least it's a woman. You know what I mean? Like
True.
It's not. This movie isn't a bunch of white guys save the day, which I appreciate.
But it's like one step down.
I don't want to get super into this. I wanted to make the point that I liked the fact there was a bunch of different faces in this movie. Even though, as I'm going to get into, the characters are not good, I liked the diversity of the cast. I appreciated that, because we need different types of faces in movies. That's very,
Right.
very important, and it's cool that they did that in a big, big movie like a Star Wars
Right.
movie.
You hear that, Tom Cruise? We're coming after you. You're 20 films a year.
Other things I liked about this movie, for the most part, the third act is pretty solid.
Like the climax and stuff?
Yeah, like all the final action sequence is pretty good, but it doesn't matter because the first two acts are not good in my opinion. And again, I'll get more into that.
Yeah, it's a little slow.
The action is competently directed for the most part. The special effects are great.
That's not really saying anything anymore.
Yeah, I know, but it's Star Wars. Like, we expect that.
Right,
And
because it
so-
won awards for every single time.
Those are really the only things I've liked about this movie.
Yeah, I liked it for the most part, but as I was thinking about it, I think it's because I'm in a very cynical mindset when it comes to Star Wars nowadays.
Yeah.
Because 7 wasn't that great. 1, 2, and 3 are garbage. Clone Wars is garbage.
So
Rebels is garbage.
one of the biggest things to me is that, and this is, I don't know, I was trying to figure out a way how to explain this. Star Wars, the original trilogy, it takes place in this universe that we're introduced to, and it's interesting because we get introduced to the concept of the Force, and there's the Rebels, and there's the Empire, and it's very black and white. It's very like good guys versus bad guys, like a
Right.
classic Western, story type thing. And that's cool, but the universe is very unique. It's something very different that people hadn't really seen before up on the big screen, in 1977. And this is something that I didn't really think about with the prequels, but the more
But
and
they're
more
terrible.
they are terrible, but the more and more we get Star Wars movies, the universe of Star Wars becomes less special. And what I mean by that is, I don't mean to be one of those people that's like, oh, because they release new movies, like it ruins the old movies. It doesn't.
Right.
We always have the original trilogy, unfortunately not in its original state, because it's been altered so many times, but we'll always in some capacity have those original movies that I love, and like no one will ever take that away. If you're going to keep making Star Wars movies, you're putting audience in a universe that they're kind of already familiar with. So the universe itself is no longer surprising, no longer captures that magic anymore.
Right.
So if you're going to make more Star Wars movies, you have to do something kind of different. Like, you have to do something unique in order for people to see the universe in a different way. And I think this movie was a grand opportunity for them to do that, and they didn't.
Right. Apparently it was, though.
Right.
Like, rumor has it that the rewrites made it a lot more bland. And I have one big group of people to thank for that, and it's all of you parents out there who have little snot-nosed kids that are under the age of 10. So, rumor has it that Rogue One was supposed to be like this love story to like Saving Private Ryan, but with like a Star Wars aesthetic, which is kind of a cool idea in my
Right.
mind.
A Star Wars war movie, essentially.
But when they were going to screen test this, they wanted to, because of course this is Star Wars and it's Disney, they wanted to focus on marketing and toys and dumb kid shit because kids ruin everything. So they brought in moms and like bloggers who write blogs about like children's toys, like the
Right.
new not Furby. There is no new Furby. What is the new thing? It's like
Tickle
that-
Me Furby.
Yeah, there we go.
We're not connected
Teeny
to this.
Beanie Baby.
We're not connected to the
Cabbage Patch
zeitgeist
Kids.
of kids' toys, so we're not even going to try.
Lego, that's still something. So they brought all these like moms and like adults who like have young children, and they showed them parts of the movie, and apparently they weren't okay with some of it, but they liked the funny robot, so they like cut everything out and they made it very, very kid friendly.
They did reshoots, and they tried to bring the tone a little bit more in line with the other Star Wars movies.
Which is unfortunate because it reminds me a lot of Ant-Man, where like
Yes.
in Ant-Man we see like Edgar Wright's Ant-Man in there, we just don't see it completely.
Right, there's glimmers of what the movie was
Like
originally.
the fact that, spoiler real quick, like the ending, I'm not gonna say the ending now, but the ending of the movie is clearly the same that it probably was beforehand.
Yeah.
It feels like it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff before the ending where it's like you can tell they're trying to start saying some things, but then they stop.
There's a lot of issues with tone in this movie because part of the movie wants to be a serious war movie, and the other part wants to be a heist film.
Right.
And I originally thought that was kind of what this movie was going to be, was more about the actual heist of the Death Star plans. And that's like the last third of the movie.
It's not even really a focus. Like, they don't even spend that
Right.
long of a time trying. Like, I was waiting for them to be like, here's the central control room. We have to get here to find out where it's at. And blah.
Yeah.
And they're like, they literally get a robot and they go, here it is. And they go grab it. Like, that's
it's very, very
And it's
quick.
not on the Death Star either. I was kind of hoping that it would actually be on the Death Star.
Yeah. And again, I didn't really have any expectations of this movie. It's no secret that I wish they would just not make more Star Wars films.
I can agree with that.
But, that's not going to happen. Again, kind of going back to what I said, if you're going to keep setting movies in the Star Wars universe, a universe that we're kind of already familiar with, we've seen X-Wings before. We've seen Star Destroyers before.
Right.
And it's okay to put those things back in, but those don't command the same awe as they did when they originally appeared.
Well, they do, but for people that ruin Hollywood for everyone.
They don't command the same awe as they originally did. They're just kind of there for fan service. And it's okay to have X-Wings and Star Destroyers and that sort of thing. It's okay to do those things, but you have to bring something, again, unique to the table because you have to make these things that we're already familiar with. You have to shed a different kind of light on them, or you have to present them in a new way. And this movie does this a couple times, and it's really good in those couple times. It's simultaneously they wanted to take risks, but they play them super safe.
Right. You said the key word, and that's fan service.
Fan service, yeah.
The fan service in this movie is so incredibly obnoxious at times.
It's super abundant and obnoxious.
There's 2 scenes in particular that are literally look at the camera and wink, and all the guys in the audience are supposed to go, "Oh, I remember that," and clap or
it's
something.
Star Wars,
right?
Wink, wink.
One of them is the stupid and unnecessary R2-D2 and C-3PO scene.
I didn't mind that one so much.
That one's terrible because it doesn't even sound like Anthony Daniels, which is weird.
I didn't notice. That one didn't bother me, to be
crap.
honest.
Skip it. But the worst one is they bump into Dr. something. I can't remember his name. They bump into Pigface and Hippo Walrus.
It's the
from the cantina in Mos Eisley.
Right, the 2 guys that bump into Luke inside the cantina and is like, "You better watch yourself. I have the death sentence in 12 systems." They run into those guys on the planet Jeddah.
And they're just like, "Hey, watch it." And it looks like a Family Guy joke.
Yeah.
He's in a high school blazer.
Yep. And it seemed like his nose was really big in comparison to A New Hope.
It seriously, it felt like who was the joke? I think it was no, maybe it was Robot Chicken. Did the joke of the guy who gets his arm cut off was a famous painter.
Yes.
And his life is horrible after that. It felt like that. It was here he is. He's young and aspiring, and he's a nice guy. And he bumped into Jyn Erso, and that's why he's angry now. Stop.
Yeah. So
stop with the garbage.
Again, I think this movie has a lot of tonal problems. It wants to be a heist movie, but it wants to be a war movie, but it still wants to be a Star Wars movie. And I'm not saying that you can't do those things, but they didn't do them here.
Right.
The other big problem I have with this movie, I don't give a shit about any of the characters at all.
I think the 2 closest you get, the blind guy who's Force sensitive and his friend.
Terrible characters.
But they're the closest ones that you get to being I like these people.
All right, so we're going to launch into spoilers, I guess, at this point.
Well, this is minor, though, still.
This is, but while we're on the topic of characters. So Jyn Erso.
Is the worst.
Main character of the movie. We see her as a little girl.
Right.
When Mads Mikkelsen gets taken and has to go work on the Death Star, her father.
Right. He's a moisture farmer.
Okay, so, and bear with me on this. So that scene, right, that's to set up okay, this is where she came from.
Right.
And then she's given the Kyber crystal, which is the crystal that are inside lightsabers, and we find out it's also the crystals that are inside the Death Star that allow it to use its big old beam to blow up planets.
Right.
So she's given the little Kyber crystal as a little girl, she grows up, and then she still has it with her, cool, whatever. So they kind of set up the idea that this Kyber crystal is going to be important. It's not at all. There's that one scene where the blind guy is like, "Hey, you have the Kyber crystal." And get more into that. And then it's dropped. It's immediately gone. It's not important anymore. So we see her as a little girl.
Yep.
Then it's okay, cut to she's imprisoned by the Imperials.
Right.
We don't know why.
No.
We never find out why she's in prison.
It's kind of jarring.
We find out very quickly that the Imperials are searching for Kyber crystals.
Right.
She is wearing a Kyber crystal around her neck that apparently the Imperials didn't find on her when they searched her, maybe, and then put her in prison. So she escapes. Then later on in the movie, she meets up with Forrest Whitaker's character, who is the leader of a band of rebels, but they're the extreme rebels.
He's it's an extremist group.
Which we've learned zero information about.
Right. We just know that they're very destructive.
Somebody says they're the extremists, and that's it. We don't see them doing anything extreme. We get no visual information.
The only thing we get is that
I'm getting to that.
They start a battle. That's it.
But there's no, like they start a battle against the Empire, which we've seen the rebels do.
Right, but
before.
I guess the thing they're trying to do is that they start it in like the middle of like a street in a town.
So here's another thing. Like, what does it look like for a city or a town to be occupied by the Imperials? Because according to this movie, the worst thing that happens is a guy walks up to you and is like, give me your identification. That's it.
Right.
We don't see visually, we don't see any of the Imperials do anything that would lead us to believe that the people of Jeddah, the city, the planet that this takes place on, we don't get any information visually that lets us know, oh, the people of Jeddah like don't want the Imperials to be here. We don't see any of that.
Yeah, they look like they're just complying with
We don't see any reason why these extremists are extreme. Like, yeah, like you said, they start a battle in the street, but that doesn't appear to be extreme any more or less than the rebels fighting the Imperials like we've seen in other movies. This movie is so devoid of visual information. I was baffled by this. So anyway, so Jyn Erso, right? Then like she meets up with Forrest Whitaker's character, the extremist. He ends up dying very stupidly. He just decides not to go with them.
Which the trailer does give away. Because his lines in the trailer are very much like the on my deathbed.
So,
but I figured it was going to be like a meaningful deathbed.
Also, what the fuck is Forrest Whitaker doing with that accent? He's just like, I'm trying to sound like fucking terrible. Like, what is that?
He sounds like someone off the Mighty Boosh.
Yes, like it's so weird. And then we kind of get the idea that Jyn, like because the rebels free her from prison, and then she goes to talk to the rebels, and the rebels are like, your father worked on the Death Star, like, we need your help. And she's kind of like, well, I don't want to help you at all. And then like, well, if you help us, we'll let you go. And she's like, okay. So we kind of get the idea that she hasn't spoken to her father in a long time.
Right.
But we don't really get any detail on that. So we're kind of like, okay, I guess they had a falling out.
Well, then we also don't get any information on why she hasn't spoke to Sol Guerrera either.
Yeah, like nothing.
Then we get like a super brief like
throwaway
story where he's like, you were my greatest soldier, Jyn. And she's like, you left me there. He's like, you had a pistol.
We don't see anything. Right. We are told that things happened in the past.
We get a shot because she hides in a bunker when her dad's taken. And like, we get a shot of him like opening up and be like, come with me, my child. And she's like, okay. And then it's done.
Yeah.
And that's all we see of them. And then the next time we hear about them, it's like, oh, I haven't talked to him in a while.
Right. So when they meet back up again, Jyn is like, you abandoned me. You like left me in the hole. And he was like, I was trying to protect you. We, as the audience, have no context for how these characters feel about each other. So when they're arguing, it doesn't mean anything to us.
Right.
Because we haven't fucking seen anything.
Nor do we care about either of them.
Then there's the pilot, the Imperial pilot who defects and gives the information, like the little data disk, to Forrest Whitaker's character.
Right.
Because I guess they knew each other in the past.
He likes, because yeah, you have to pay attention a lot to get it. He has a lot of respect for Jin's dad and knows that he's a good man.
But
and
we're just told that.
Right.
Like, we don't see that.
We should have seen him give
a character. Right, a character just gives exposition that says that.
Right.
So then the Imperial pilot hands over that data information to Forrest Whitaker's character. Then they torture him with a terrible-looking CGI monster that reminded me of the fucking things from Force Awakens. That was throwaway and awful. And then there's a line where he's like, after this is done with you, like, your mind won't be the same. The next scene we see him, he's kind of like, the Imperial pilot's kind of like, oh, I'm confused. And then he's fine the rest of the movie. That has no bearing, no relevant. There's no weight to that. Like, this, and then, like, Jyn is, I know I'm just rambling, but when Jyn, like, views the hologram of her father, and her father in the hologram is like, I made the plans, there's a weakness, you have to do this. She like breaks down crying, and now she's like, okay, I'm totally on board with the rebel cause.
Right.
Out of nowhere. Like, again, there is no visual information to suggest that she has had a change of heart. Like,
this film relies on a ton of assumptions.
So many.
You have to assume that she still loves her father. You have to assume that she wants to get him back.
Right.
You have to assume that when she sees this, it pulls back, and it's like There's
all
no
you
reason why
all you
she
had to
should.
do is in the scene where the rebels first are talking to her and they're like, "We need you to find your father." She says like, "I haven't spoken to my father in years. I hope he was dead, or I thought he was dead, or he
It
might
makes
as well
it
be
easier to
dead."
think that he's dead.
Like all you have to do is like show maybe have her turn away and like not look at one of the characters and give them this like just a little musical cue that there's some forlorn feelings going on, like anything visual to help us figure out what these
They
characters are
said it
thinking.
though.
There is a complete, again, I know I keep saying it, there's a complete absence of visual information in this
It's
movie.
just because they're gonna tell you.
So, like, just to give an example, in Force Awakens, when we're introduced to Rey, who's our main character, so obviously she's going to get the most
She
screen
might be the main
time.
character.
So we get introduced to her on whatever the hell the planet was. I don't remember.
Jakku.
Jakku, cool.
Not Tatooine.
Desert planet. We get to see her. She's like scavenging. She's collecting junk, turning in the stuff to get food. Like we see her kind of struggling through life. There's that great moment where she has the rebel fighter helmet and she like puts it on kind of playfully as she's looking around, eating her food. Visually, we get a sense of who Rey is and what her aspirations are.
Right.
Again, there's that great moment in A New Hope where Luke goes out and looks at the two setting suns and the music crescendos and like this, there's no dialogue. Visually and through sound, through the music,
Right.
we are given enough information about Luke Skywalker in that 5 seconds to understand, all right, this is a character that clearly aspires to do greater things.
Wants to do more.
He wants to leave where he is. He wants to go beyond and do great things.
Well, and he even says it. Like he says it beforehand, but he doesn't. He
doesn't
flat out like go, "I want to go out and do bigger things." He's like, "Why don't you let me do this?"
Yeah, but even if you didn't have that music and those visuals convey a message
right
through visuals, through your eyes, through the media of film. Oh, I get who this person is. In the same way, when Rey puts on that fighter pilot helmet and she's sitting there and looking out, and again, the music's kind of kicking up, we visually understand this character, when she looks up into the sky, this character wants to go places. Like,
right.
We get who she is as a character purely through visual information.
Well, and she's 100 times more charming than Felicity Jones's character, because she's terrible. But
she's not given anything to do.
She's just kind of boring through the whole thing, too.
Right. Well, that's what I mean. I don't want to blame it on her performance.
No, she's a great actress. Like,
she's
I know that.
just not given anything to do.
Right, and she kind of goes into the whole, I call it the Scarlett Johansson thing, which is if you want to be a serious female character, you have to be bland, and you have to talk with like a very boring, stale tone, aka Lucy or the trailers for Ghost in the Shell so far. With Rey, like, not only do we get a character introduction with her, she's charming. Like, I always think back to the scene where they're in the Millennium Falcon and they're being chased by the TIE fighters, and like Finn's like, "We need to get cover, we're getting shot at, blah blah blah." And she's like, "I know a place that's gonna work," and then like she quietly just like looks down and is like, "Hopefully."
Yeah.
And it's like we get it. She's relatable. She's in over her head, but she's giving it her all.
And I agree with everything that you're saying. I wanted to give an example or a couple examples of how, again, I've said it 100 times and I apologize for repeating myself, but film is a visual medium and you have to be able to convey information visually, sometimes with dialogue and sometimes without it. And both of those examples, Luke in A New Hope and Rey in Force Awakens, when we're first kind of introduced to them, that's 10 seconds of purely visual information that gives us so much of an idea of who these characters are.
Right.
It's possible. Like, you have to get a little creative, you have to think about it, but it's not impossible to do these things. And I feel like this is a problem with movies in general, but specifically this movie, Rogue One, there is no visual shorthand in this movie for who Jyn Erso or really any of the characters are. And that's a fucking problem.
Yep.
And then Cassian Andor, like, starts the movie, right? The Han Solo, essentially, of this movie.
Nope.
A character that I really liked at the beginning because he goes to talk to an informant, an Imperial informant, who we don't know where this character came from, whatever. And he kills the Imperial informant. He shoots him, like, in the back so he can get away. And I was like, whoa, this is different. Like, this is a character that just murdered. This is a rebel that murdered somebody to get away. Like, okay, this is different for Star Wars. Nope. That doesn't go anywhere.
They're probably going to change that, though, when you think about it. They're probably going to have him shoot first, and then he'll shoot him in the back.
And then, like, so later, when they escape off the planet, Forrest Whitaker's dead because he just decides that he does not want to go with them.
And there's a big problem with that because there's a big plot point afterwards
Yes.
of like the only people that watch the hologram are me and Forrest Whitaker, and it's like, oh well, where's Forrest Whitaker? Oh well, he commits suicide.
He just decided not to come with us. Like
Right.
he didn't go down in a blaze of glory. He wasn't like defending them from a bunch of Imperials. He was just like, no, you go. I'm going to leave you some vague dialogue about live the dream, save the
Don't
dream.
let the rebellion die.
God, but what's your connection to the rebellion? We don't fucking know.
Right.
Because this movie didn't show us what the connection was. Like, we know you're an extreme rebel for reasons that are not shown or conveyed in the movie at all.
The rebels want him dead.
Like in that one, they didn't even try to like exposition that. They didn't even say like, well, there was this one mission where they were gonna help us, but then they killed some people. Nothing. Not even like shoved in exposition. So bad. So then like they're going to the planet. To there's Cassian Andor, there's Jyn Erso, there's the blind dude and his buddy.
Yeah.
Zero like
K-12 and then the pilot.
K-12, the droid, best character in the movie.
Better than C-3PO.
And then the pilot who doesn't get anything to do, like, because just, again, he's supposed to be, like, messed up in the head, but then he's not for no reason.
Also, K-12 is played by Alan Tudyk, which
like,
is fantastic.
He was fine. Like, he was funny. Like, there was a little too many, I think, like, little jokes. But overall, like, he was fine. He was cool. Like, he was a character. Unlike everybody else in this movie.
And when... spoiler, he dies, like, he's probably the one that we feel the worst about when he dies.
For sure. So the whole thing with Forrest Whitaker and, like, the Extreme Rebels, you could just cut all of that from the movie. It serves no purpose. Like, the Imperial pilot could have just defected and, like, gone to the Rebels.
And told them, hey, he's a good guy.
And told them, like, hey, this is what's going on. We have to go get the plans. Like, that entire 25, 30-minute sequence... no bearing.
Oh, it's more than that, because then you gotta remember the next planet is just an extension of that, which, again, serves no more purpose.
Here's the other thing. This just kind of going along with that point. So convoluted. Like, the first act, like, almost the first two acts, so convoluted. Like, there's like 4 to 5 different planets.
Only
like,
keep hopping back and forth between them.
There's the planet that they rescue Jyn from. Like, just make that just make that Jeddah. You don't need a totally separate planet with its own fucking title card that's like, now we're here, now we're here.
She's on Jeddah. They're on a planet in the beginning. Then she goes to she goes to a random planet where she's captured.
Yeah.
Then she goes to Yavin 4. Then she goes to Jeddah. Then they go back to Yavin 4, I think. Then they go to another planet. And this is all in like a 40-minute span.
Here's the thing. This is what you do. You have Yavin 4. That's important. That's where the Rebel base is. Got it.
Right. Or just do it something else. You don't need Yavin 4.
Then just go to fucking Alderaan. Because as important as Alderaan is in A New Hope, you've never fucking utilized it in any of the movies.
Right.
I don't know why. Like, just make it Alderaan and Yavin 4. You're done. You don't need all these planets.
Well, and then like a climax planet.
Sure, that's fine. Like the where they go to steal the files, and it's like that planet. That's fine. That's 3 planets. Or the Death Star. Like,
just make the Death Star.
It's so needlessly convoluted at the beginning of this movie. So like they spend all this time showing you all these different locations. They spend 0 time giving you any backstory or any reason to give a shit about any of the characters.
Right.
So when all the action sequences are happening and people start dying, you don't care. Because you don't know anything about these people. The things that you've been expositioned at, the things that you've been told in the movie, hey, this Imperial pilot guy, his mind's gonna go crazy. But then it doesn't, because reasons. Or, hey, this Cassian Andor dude, he totally murdered that informant, but then he just has a change of heart for 0 reason.
Right.
Yeah, so they go to the planet with Mads Mikkelsen. They go to try and get him. So, like, Cassian...
Rain planet.
Yeah.
Rain planet that's not Camino.
Yeah, Rain planet, whatever. Cassian Andor, he has a secret mission where he's supposed to kill Mads Mikkelsen.
Right.
Like, they find him, kill him. All right, that's cool. That's interesting. And then, so like, when they're on their way there, Jyn is like, okay, there was this hologram and the battle station, the Death Star, has a weakness. My father specifically built it there. And Cassian Andor is like, oh, who else saw this hologram? Well, nobody besides Forrest Whitaker, but he decided to just kill himself for no reason.
Right.
Side note, at the beginning of this movie, Jyn and K2 like have an antagonistic relationship. There's a line at the very beginning where K2 is like, what? She gets a gun and I don't get a gun? And she's like, trust goes both ways. I liked that line. Like, that was a smidgen of character right there. Like, that was kind of interesting. So then the movie sets up this idea that, like, K2 doesn't trust Jin Urso.
Right.
Cool, got it. So then when they land on the planet, Cassian is like, you stay here. I'm going to take the Imperial pilot and we'll go find Mads Mikkelsen and we'll bring him back. You stay here and watch the ship. So they leave. And then
K2.
Yes, so the blind guy who was
he
terrible
just randomly
character.
joins them.
Whatever. That's like, yeah, the blind guy and his bodyguard dude, like, they just randomly join the group for no reason.
And the blind guy just goes, that was interesting. I don't think he's telling the truth.
Yeah.
The Force tells me when someone is going to kill someone.
Yeah, and so Donnie Yen, the blind guy asks, he's like, what does he look like, meaning Cassian, does he look like a killer? And then Jin's like, what are you saying? What are you saying? What do you mean? K2 turns around and is like, well, his gun was in the sniper position when he left. Why the fuck are you helping Jin? You don't like Jin.
Right.
It is established earlier in the movie that you don't like Jin.
Or any of these people.
Right. So then he helps her there, and then there's a couple more times where they're antagonistic. Then at the end, she gives him a gun to defend them.
It's supposed to be like the big circle moment.
Yeah, and it's set up like, oh, this is the moment where we've come together. But you haven't earned that moment. Like, it is filmed, like, they pause and, like, the music starts to come in and it wants to be this moment where it's like, oh, they're finally friends. No, you didn't do that.
Right.
You did not write the fucking screenplay for that moment to mean anything. God, I so did not like this movie.
Well, and why does she just assume that it's her dad that he's going to kill?
Yeah,
It is a full thing of, like, people, like, there could be a general there could be anything.
Right.
And just, it happens that the time that they're there, the general shows up.
You know what, like, fucking coincidences, I'll give them that.
There's coincidences all over this
That's
movie.
fine. Like, there's coincidences in Star Wars, I will give them that.
We've skipped an essential thing that happens in between these moments.
Sure, go for it.
And it is a moment where I was in the theater and I literally went, what the hell? Like, this is horrible.
I know what you mean.
We get, who's the bad guy's name? He looks like the dude from that used to do
Krennic.
America's Funniest Home Videos.
His Ben Mendelsohn is his real name.
Like, he's kind of this new up and coming general.
Yeah.
He's in charge of, like, wanting to make the Death Star a weapon and everything like that. So he goes onto an observation deck on a Star Destroyer and, like, he walks up to the back of Peter Cushing's Grand Moff Tarkin.
Yes. Who, if you didn't know, died in 1994.
Like, yeah, I was going to say he was in the 90s when he passed. Yeah. He couldn't even do any of the prequel stuff. When he walks up, Cushing's character is looking out into the galaxy, and I thought, okay, this is going to be very tasteful. Cushing's clearly gone. They can't do it. They don't feel confident enough to do a whole scene with the CG, so we're just going to see his reflection, like, in the window. Wrong. He turns around, and he looks like a rubbery, like, video game character who's just like, hello, and it's like, nope. I was just done immediately. It is jarring. With, like, the technology that we have today, like, Uncharted 4 looks better than he does. He looks like he's from 2008.
So he would look really good if he wasn't standing next to real live-action actors.
Scooby-Doo looks better.
Like, he, in contrast, looks out of place. It's an entirely computer-generated Grand Moff Tarkin.
It's not entirely
computer-generated. Right, I know they used a real actor and they overlaid the face.
It's just his head.
But that's what I mean, like, it looks fake. And here, this is the thing, like, this movie is trying to do so many things. It wants to be like a serious Star Wars movie that's about the horrors of war, but it also wants to be a heist movie. So, like, when you're going for this serious tone, and then you have this completely CGI'd face Tarkin,
right?
It immediately removes you from the movie. Like, it immediately takes you out of the experience.
Is it the new Scorpion King?
That's essentially what it is. Like, if he wasn't standing next to live action people, he would look fantastic. Like, it's a great use of computers to replicate the original look of Peter Cushing, but when he's standing next to live actors, you get that uncanny valley effect where like, it looks fake because he's standing next to these real people, and they use him so much in this movie.
He's in this a lot.
He's in like maybe 15 minutes total screen time. And, like, they clearly were proud of it because they keep going back to it over and over and over again. But he looks awful.
Yeah, and here's the only reason why I disagree with you on that he looks bad because he's with other people. Marvel has used this technology twice before, and both times it looks better than this. Both with Michael Douglas as in Ant-Man,
Yep.
and then Tony Stark in Civil War, I think both of those look way, way better than this does.
I agree with you. The difference, though, is that you're using the same actors and you're de-aging them,
Right.
versus using an actor who's not there at all.
But then just use that actor. The guy looks like Peter Cushing. I don't know why they spent so much time.
We're not disagreeing with each other, my friend. we're not disagreeing.
So much
with each
time
other.
getting someone that looks like Peter Cushing to then put Peter Cushing's face on him. Just use him. It's not the same. Who's the woman in white? The senator.
Mon Mothma.
Well, it's not her. That's just the one from the prequels. It's not the original one from the original trilogy.
Right.
So if they just recast her, just recast him.
Or
fans are going to be like, oh no,
or
but who cares?
Just don't write him in the movie. Or make him a hologram.
Or don't make Star Wars.
Or you get to write the screenplay however you want. You don't have to write the screenplay where it involves a character famously portrayed by an actor who has been dead for 20 years.
Yep.
Just don't write him in the screenplay.
Make it anyone else. Make it another general. That's so hard to do.
So back to Rain Planet. Cassian Andor, for no reason that you can possibly discern, just decides, you know what? I'm not going to kill Mads Mikkelsen. I changed my mind. Why? Great question. The film gives no visual information to suggest this.
He's seconds from pulling the trigger, and it's like he can't.
Just decides not to.
Like, why, though?
Nope.
There's no explanation for why. And then Jin just automatically hates him because he was going to.
Yep. And then, so
she doesn't know if he was going to.
This is the one interesting thing. This movie has a lot of oh, this is an interesting concept. Like, there are extremists within the rebels. What's that mean? Who knows? The movie doesn't explain.
Right.
Oh, there are people that still revere the Jedi. Even though the Jedi aren't around anymore, there's this blind man and his buddy who revere the Force and revere the Jedi, so they've kind of started this religion around that. What's that look like? Don't know. The movie doesn't give you that information. Oh, there's these people that are being oppressed by the Empire. What's that look like? We don't know. We're not given any visual information to suggest this. There's this moment where Cassian Andor tells Jin, I've been fighting since I was 6 years old.
Right.
I've done terrible things in order for this cause to be advanced. So don't come at me because your father just died, like the whole world is crumbling down around you, because some of us have been doing this since we were children. And that's a great moment. And I'm like, okay, cool.
He's going to go into why.
Tell me more. Nope.
She goes, oh.
Yeah, just all you have to do, this is in so many movies. There's just a quiet moment between the two characters where he would explain, when I was a kid, this happened, my mother died, or my father was...
my wife and child.
Or fucking anything. No, nothing. The problems with this movie is they don't convey anything visually, and it's just exposition. This guy isn't even given exposition. Like, the idea that you have had to fight the Empire since you were a little kid, the idea that not everybody who participates in these wars gets to wield a lightsaber and fight against evil and blow up the Death Star, like that there's people on the ground that have to do bad things in order so that our heroes from the other movies can do the big heroic things. That is interesting. That is dramatic. That is mineable for dramatic content and storytelling. And this movie does fucking nothing with it.
Yeah, if it had just stuck to a simple, let's get the Death Star plans, period, it would have been better.
Well, you could have done this two ways. You could have made your war movie, which is cool. Like, you could have had your Star Wars Saving Private Ryan. And that's okay to do. But in order for a war movie to be successful, we have to be invested in who the characters are.
Right.
Because most of the time in war movies, really bad things happen to characters. Spoilers, people die. And that
Spoilers for all war movies.
That is powerful because we care about who these people are. Like, we talked about Fury several weeks ago and that awesome scene that I talked about. That scene in that movie, which is a great scene, that 15 minutes has more character going on than this entire 2 hours of a movie.
Right.
And it's not close. So if you're going to have this gritty war movie where bad things happen to our heroes and maybe our heroes have to do bad things and the line between who's the good guy and who's the bad guy is kind of blurred, that's okay. You can make that movie, but we have to be invested in the characters on both sides.
Right.
Or you could do a heist movie. a la Ocean's 11.
It should have
where
been like Ocean's 11.
all of the characters are kind of just archetypes, but it's kind of fun and it's kind of breezy. And
Right.
like you put that in the Star Wars universe and everything kind of has like this tone of Force Awakens or A New Hope where it is kind of a little more lighthearted. Like you could do that. That's okay. And you don't have to have as much character development because the situation around the heist, the heist at the casino in Ocean's 11, like that situation is interesting. And we get to see how our heroes use their skills in order to pull off this heist.
Right.
So the using of their skills informs who their characters are. Another brilliant movie that does the same thing is the movie Snatch,
Yes.
also with Brad Pitt, where like there's this huge cast of characters that we don't really spend a ton of time learning about their backstory, but their actions inform us about who they are, and the dialogue is written in a witty way that informs us who these characters
it's a classic
are.
Guy Ritchie.
Where?
London.
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 London?
Yes, London. You know, fish, chips, cup of tea, bad food, worse weather, Mary fucking Poppins, London.
This movie, Rogue One, tries to do both and fails at both because the characters aren't interesting, so the war stuff doesn't work because we don't care.
Right.
And the film doesn't have the tone of being breezy and being fun, so the lack of character development stands out so starkly. I did not like this movie.
Right. Like they're getting that at this point, I think. But the biggest thing this movie does that, like you said with that the prequels does really bad, and it does suck comparing this to the prequels, but in the prequels, every single war scene in the prequels doesn't matter. Because
Right.
it's clones versus robots. Or it's stupid Jamaican rabbits versus robots.
Mm-hmm.
And like in this, it's nameless soldiers versus other nameless soldiers.
Yep.
Who I guess aren't clones anymore. Or are they clones? Are they all Jangos?
Let's
Who
just
knows?
say they're not because they have different
They have
voices.
different voices. They're not all Jangos. So after this, we get the big classic scene where something that we'll probably get into a lot towards the end of this, talking about it, is there's a lot of stuff in the trailers cut out
Oh
of
yeah,
this.
yes.
Including the one thing that I really had no interest in seeing this movie about is there were two lines in the first trailer that made me roll my eyes really bad. The first one being from Forrest Whitaker, who's like, when all this is done, what will you become? And I was like, that's horrible. That's really cheesy and heavy-handed. The worst one, though, is when Jyn Erso goes, well, this is a rebellion, isn't it? I rebel. That sounded like an 18-year-old kid saying no to his parents.
While I agree that those, out of context, both of those lines are no good, if you had made the breezy heist movie, both of those lines
It would have been more lighthearted, and
Right.
it could have fit better.
would fit better, would
but it
fit
wouldn't have
that
fit
tone.
in a war drama, which is what
Correct.
those scenes are more supposed to be.
Yeah, and they cut those lines. There's a lot of stuff in the trailers
There's
that
a
aren't
crap
in
ton
the
cut.
there's a lot. And that's okay. It's okay to kind of reshape things. Like that's not a big deal. But that shows you they cut these lines that would have been effective in a more breezy tone, but then they also cut things that were more dark.
Right.
That tells me that the movie, the screenwriter or the director or everybody involved, they don't know what they want to accomplish.
Well, and the problem is it's this director. Like, a lot of people say that he's really good at shooting action scenes. I hated Godzilla, like, with a passion. I thought Godzilla was crap.
Didn't see it.
And, like, everyone loved it. And everyone loves this right now. And, like, I thought it was okay. Like, I enjoyed parts of it. But, again, everyone's going to love it. And, like, I don't know if it's because it's Star Wars. It's probably because it's Star Wars. I don't know why I'm saying I don't know. It's because it's Star Wars. But, like, he just has a really bad way of getting from point A to point B. And he just kind of does, like,
Oh no,
a
he
lot
just
of-
puts in a title card. It's fine.
Right, he just tells you. Instead of like a person like walking down the hallway or one of my favorite transition scenes is from Hot Fuzz, and it's Simon Pegg getting transferred out of the Capitol.
Yep.
And it's like this really comedic scene of like showing motion, and it's really, really well done. And like in this, he would just tell you. Someone would just say, yeah, Jin boarded a ship and got there yesterday. Like they wouldn't show anything.
And
that's this guy's problem is he has no idea how to move scene to scene. He just does scenes.
Yeah.
And they're okay.
Again, the movie to me feels very convoluted and it feels very jerky and it doesn't know where it's going until the third act. The third act is cleaned up quite a bit, and I have a feeling that the third act is probably the thing that they altered the least after the reshoots, because the third act is, for the most part, pretty solid. And here's the thing, again, spoilers, all of the characters die at the end of this movie.
Right, which is what I was meaning by that had to have been
Yes.
part of the original darker tone.
And I'll be honest, like, I like that. Like, that is a very bold thing to do because, again, keep in mind, this is a Star Wars movie, so parents are going to take their kids
Right,
to
they're
see
dumb
this
children.
movie. It's very brave and very bold to kill all of the characters.
And in some ways, kind of brutal.
Right.
Like I know he's a robot, but like I said, K-12's death is really rough.
Yes.
He
And
gets shot over and over again.
that could have been incredibly powerful if we cared about any of the characters.
Right.
The chance that they took, the risk that they took to kill off all the main characters in a mainstream movie that's kind of for kids, in a mainstream Star Wars movie, no less. That is awesome.
Yep.
And they fucked it up because you don't care. It doesn't matter. There's no investment. There's no emotional weight to these characters dying, and it's a damn shame.
Right. So back to, I guess, the plot. They have like a round table meeting
Oh,
where Admiral Akbar's cousin's there, and there's other people, and they're like, "No, we don't believe her." And like, so the general consensus is no, right?
right. So just to kind of set the scene, this is after they get back from Mads Mikkelsen is dead at this point.
She's bringing the information of like,
Hey,
what
we
he
can,
was.
right, we can go get the plans. They reveal a weakness about the Death Star.
They're building
like,
a weapon.
We should do this. We need to strike first. And there's a group of rebel leaders all around. I like this idea.
I think it's still the Senate. I think it's supposed to be part of the Senate.
Yeah, well, I like the idea that it's showing the rebels is like this kind of diverse group of different people that are coming from different places. And again,
Even if only one of them's an alien.
the idea that the members of the Rebel Alliance disagree on how to proceed against fighting the Empire, that is an interesting idea that they
It's
don't
thrown
do
out the
anything with, because Jyn Erso gives the most generic speech
Right.
I've heard in a movie in a long time, where it's just like, now we need to do this. Like, we need hope. It's just hope,
They keep
hope.
saying hope.
And it's like, again,
Rebellions are built on hope.
you started this movie being like, I don't give a shit about the rebellion. There's one really good line where she's talking to Forrest Whitaker. Like, he says, the Empire is taking control of everything. Like, all you have to do is look up and you can see, like, they're all over the place.
Like, he
And
says something about like the flag.
Yeah, like the flag of the Empire
Does it
covers
bother
everything.
you when the flag is shown everywhere?
And she's like, it doesn't matter because I just keep my head down. Like, I just look down. I never look up. And like, that was a good line. Like that,
Right.
Okay, that informs me a little bit about who you are as a character. I don't care about the rebellion because like, I just keep my head down and I stay out of the way, which is immediately undercut because then we get the hologram of Mads Mikkelsen, and then she breaks down and cries, and now she's on board with the Rebel Alliance.
Right.
Like, within the course of 2 minutes, you specifically established this character as, I don't care about the rebellion, I'm just looking out for myself, to now I am 100% on board with the rebellion, and I will give my life in order to make sure that the rebellion succeeds. There's no fucking transition. That's not how you write characters. That's not how stories are told.
Right. And if you want another weightless scene, how about when Cassio shows up and he's like, "Hey, we're all gonna fight for you.
Yeah.
This giant cast of people behind me who we've never seen before, we're gonna fight for you." She's like, "Okay."
Right, because the Rebel Council decides it's too risky. We're not going to fight against the Empire.
Hold off on it.
That mission's not going to happen. And then she like Charlie Brown's like do, and then Cassian's like, don't worry, I've got these 20 guys and we're gonna go do it. We're with you.
20 guys who we've never met, who we don't know if they were against it or why they would be for it. Like, what they should have been is they should have been a group of people that maybe were hurt by the Empire, or maybe were part of that city or something. That way we know that they have a personal vendetta and that's why they're doing this, like she does.
That, or all you had to do, actually have Cassian and Jyn have meaningful interactions,
right,
to show the idea that Cassian's mind is being changed, because that does not happen.
No, well, it happens, but
it's like,
it happens because
it's like one expositional line, but there's no transition. So all you had to do is have Cassian in the meeting where Jin's giving the speech, that terrible speech, but whatever. And then when all of the rebels disagree, have Cassian like just show a shot of him like he's visually disgusted or he's
Right.
visually disappointed or whatever, and he leaves like angrily, in front of everybody. Then when he shows up with all those dudes, even if you didn't introduce them, you at least have this visual transition of Cassian leaving the meeting, angered or disappointed. So when he comes back and he's like, Jin, we're with you, we, the audience, have an emotional connection, an emotional visual representation of his frustration, which makes his disobeying of the orders of the rebels make sense.
It's more impactful.
Nothing. Just out of nowhere, it's like, hey, we're with you for reasons.
Right.
And that's this whole movie in a
We don't like
nutshell.
the Empire.
The whole movie in the nutshell is characters do things for reasons.
Right. We then get a lovely scene with General Man who goes to Mustafar to a castle, and
Talks to Vader.
Vader, who is got to be having PTSD flashbacks daily, where he just like looks down and is like, oh, that's
Again,
where I burned.
right. Like, we could argue about the fact that would Vader have a castle on Mustafar? Like, again,
Apparently he was supposed to.
Yeah, that's
in
like a thing
original
that they've
sketches.
planned for years and years and years, like since
Whatever.
Empire. I will give them that. Like, that's fine. This movie has so many problems. Like, I don't even care about does this make sense from a Star Wars
Right.
perspective? Like, it's just a broken film.
Like, here's in that scene,
Yeah.
he goes up to talk to the general, and like
so the reveal of Vader is awesome because like
Yes.
the
When we
shot
first
it's,
see him,
right.
he's in,
so
like,
it's Krennic standing there, like he's
Yeah.
in frame, he's in the bottom left of the frame, and behind him is this big giant wall, and the door like starts to open, it's opening like upward, and we see the shadow of Vader like go against the wall, and it's huge and it's giant, and the
Right.
music kicks in. That's the best shot of the entire movie. Like,
well, but that's not our introduction to him. Our introduction to him is earlier on in the film. We see someone come up and they say, "Hey, General Krennic's here for you," and like he's in like this weird like
the back to tank.
Yeah,
The back to tank.
which is really cool because it shows him at a very vulnerable state.
Yes.
And then he gets into the armor, and yeah, when he shows up. And to be honest, as much as I was kind of like, okay, they're putting Vader in here, and Star Wars doesn't understand what Vader is anymore because they're idiots, he's like the best part of this whole movie, which
So-
is the worst thing to say.
Here's the thing. That scene could have been great.
Right.
There's several things going on. One, man, James Earl Jones just sounds weird in
He
this
does.
scene.
It sounded like his
he's
voice was off.
he just sounds and I know the dude's getting old, but he sounds old. Like
He still sounds better than the Battlefront Vader.
Oh, absolutely. But I don't know if they just did the mixing weird but he doesn't sound quite like Vader.
He doesn't sound as intimidating either.
Yeah, and so this conversation, it's going whatever, and then he makes
He starts force choking
fucking
him.
he force chokes Krennic.
Right.
He doesn't kill him, and then as he's
like-
leaving, he's like, "Don't choke on your ambitions, Krennic."
Right, it's like, shut up, Vader.
Fuck you! Darth Vader doesn't make puns.
Right.
Fuck you!
I heard someone argue that it was like, well, he's still younger, and it's like, no, you're not younger after you get put in lava. I'm sorry, you don't make puns after your body is like 80% metal.
Again, the tone problems of this movie. You've specifically put Darth Vader in this movie to make it this big, intimidating moment, this like kind of movie monster moment, and you immediately undercut it with a pun.
Right.
Like, fuck,
That's like a Joker thing.
dude.
It's not
Like,
a Darth
what?
Vader thing.
Who wrote this goddamn script? Like, come on.
Probably 6 people.
Come on. Like, you're doing things that are the antithesis of the thing you're trying to accomplish.
Right.
So much in this movie. Fuck, I did not like this movie.
So we finally get to the climax, which honestly is the best part of the movie.
Yeah, by far. Yeah,
it's
not
just like-
close.
It's like a long setup, and like there's plans, and they're gonna split up. And
Yeah, it's
each,
like
each
a-
person has their roles.
It's like a heist. Like, it's kind of fun and it's kind of
Right.
interesting.
And I even liked how like so the soldiers like march off to a different landing pad
Yeah.
to try to distract them, and like I like how the pilot is just sitting in the ship and he's like, I'm gonna help them. So he starts getting on and he's like, this is launch pad 1, we've got him over here. And then he has another guy in the one pick him and go, this is launch pad 13, we have him over here.
Yeah, like,
And like he's getting them distracted.
that's fun.
Like, and I really loved the shot of Greenwich's up in like the observation tower, and like there's just explosions happening all over the island, and he's like, are we all blind? Like, he's just like yelling at them like, go. And like it was really cool. Like,
Yes, these
it
are
was a-
fun moments that are visually
it was
compelling.
the best part of the whole movie. And but the random thing is like all of a sudden they're like, oh hey, there's a random Imperial message. They're being attacked. And, like, the Republic's like, I guess we should go back them up. No, you wouldn't.
So I think,
you would
again,
deem them as, like, a random group of, like extremists.
The idea here is that the Mon Calamari general, the not Admiral Akbar.
Yeah, his name's, like Rutabaga?
Yeah, whatever. In the meeting...
I know it's a
the idea is that he's supposed to be for attacking the Empire and everybody else is against it. And, like, we vaguely get that. So, like, the idea is that they say, like, Admiral or Commander whatever is going to help them.
Right.
So the idea is that, okay, now there's a reason. Like, he has his reason to, like, go do his thing, to be the Admiral and to take the ships there. But again, we needed a little more of that to really solidify the idea that, like, this is why he's helping them.
Just a scene where he talks to Jin by himself.
Or anything. Yeah,
and,
like that would have been perfect. Like,
or he's just like, look, I'm sorry that they don't side with you.
Here
Politicians,
you go.
Right?
This is exactly what you do. You have a scene, where he talks to Jin and he's like, how do you know that they're, like, are you certain? And she was like, my father wouldn't lie. Like, I know my father wouldn't lie. And the Admiral would be like, good enough for me. Or
this
like,
is my cousin Akbar.
You mean like an emotional moment
right.
between two characters? Like, that would be great if the movie fucking had that. God.
So we won't get too much into the climax because
it's mostly good.
It's mostly just action. It's mostly good.
Yeah,
like,
it's pretty solid.
They all split up. The group, there's like a on foot group. Jin, Casio Computer, and K-12 go into the main tower to go get the plans.
Then there's a space battle.
Right, and the space battle looks gorgeous.
Yeah, they use the hammerhead thing to push the Death Star,
the Star Destroyer
into another one. Like, that was kind of cool.
I did also like the fact that Grand Moff Tarkin's computer friend, like, jump drove the Death Star to the planet just to freaking blow it up.
That was cool.
Yeah, he was like, I'm just gonna wipe it clean.
Oh, there was the cool part where the rebels are trying to get away through hyperspace, and the Star Destroyer, like, shows up and they crash into it.
Yeah,
that was cool. Like, again, third act, pretty solid.
Yeah, the third act was easily the best
I wish
part.
I just gave a shit about anybody in the third act.
Because, like, another part that's cut from the film that I'm kind of bummed out about because I was kind of looking forward to it is there's a shot in the trailer of, like, Jin's on top of the observation deck, and she's, like, walking towards one of the towers, but she's, like, limping, and, like, a TIE fighter just, like, comes up to level with her. That's gone.
Not in the movie.
A TIE fighter shows up and shoots at the bridge, and that's it.
Yep.
But, like, the big climax is Krennic is on the bridge, too.
Yes.
And, like, he just gets shot and he dies.
I have a problem with this. So Krennic shows up, and Jyn Erso's standing there, and Krennic is like, who are you?
He knows who she is.
No. Why would he ask that? To him, it's just a rebel.
Right.
He would just shoot her. There's no point in the movie where they have interacted with each other besides the prologue, besides the very, very beginning when she was a little girl. So, like, when Krennic goes, who are you? It wants it to be this moment where Jyn is like, I'm Jyn Erso. You killed my father. You killed my father. Prepare to die. But one, we don't care enough about Jyn for that to be effective.
No.
And two, there's just no connective tissue for that enmity, that hatred of her to be there from him. Like, the movie hasn't given us that. Like, he's not going to ask, who are you? He's just going to shoot her. So again, it's this another moment, just like when Jyn gives K2 the gun, where the movie wants it to be this moment, but it hasn't earned that being a moment.
Right. So he is shot by Cassius. That's it. But we do get one final kind of cool scene where, like, they get the file up to
they get the plans.
They get the plans up to one of the big ships, and, like, Vader just freaking boards it, and he just, like, walks in, and it's the first time we see a saber in the whole movie, and, like, it just shows, like, the force of Vader.
Yeah, the power of Darth Vader.
Just, like, without stopping, walks through, like, 10 rebels.
He's a monster. Like, he just cuts through all of the rebels like butter, and, like, that was cool.
Like, he's, like blocking their blaster bullets. He's, like, pulling them out of their hands. He, like, shoves some dude into the ceiling and, like, carelessly just, like, swings his saber up and, like, chops his back. And it's like, this is cool. This shows how intimidating he is.
Yep.
That's gone.
And then there's a CG Leia, and it looks like shit.
It looks better than Grand Moff Tarkin, though.
No, it looks worse, but it's only on screen for, like, 2 seconds, so it's not as bad. Still looks terrible.
Yep. And then it literally ends with, like, seconds before the first shot of A New Hope.
All right. So that was the plot. That was like, and
my 2 biggest problems with this movie that I could go into for a long time. First one is Vader, which is funny because I just said that he's got some of the best moments in the whole movie. the morons that own Star Wars now and George Lucas, like, they don't understand who Vader is anymore. Like, Vader in 4, 5, and 6 wasn't this, like, illustrious super soldier, amazing, like, intimidating guy. He was just a good pilot who was, like, intimidating because he knew the Force. In 4, he's Tarkin's bitch the whole movie. He has to answer to him. Anytime he does anything out of line, Tarkin's like, Vader, that's enough. And Vader's like, okay. He's not this super soldier, which is what they make him in 1, 2, and 3. So now he has to be this amazing godsend in these movies, and it's stupid, and it's horrible. And the other big thing is...
I've never thought about that. That's interesting.
Because like, he's just a pilot.
I see what you mean, yeah. I don't know if I 100% agree, but that's an interesting point. I've never thought about that.
My biggest reason why I say it is... In Rogue One, there is a very big hint that Vader and Tarkin are on the same level, or Vader might even be above him because there's a lot of like, bring Lord Vader in, or send Lord Vader in, something like that. But then you gotta remember in 4, there's a round table meeting.
Right.
And in that round table meeting, Vader is specifically standing behind Tarkin like he's supposed to be like a guard or something.
Right.
He's not sitting at the table with the generals. He's not leading the meeting. He's just there to protect.
Yeah, that's fair. That's an interesting way to think about it.
My other big thing is the idea of the Force. I think the idea of the Force has changed drastically from the original trilogy to now. One of my favorite parts of the original trilogy is Han Solo's like diss of the Force.
Yeah.
How he calls it an old religion, how it doesn't exist very much anymore in the universe. However, Rogue One, which presumably takes place a couple days before the events of A New Hope,
right.
The Force is widely accepted. It's still talked about.
Kind of. Yeah,
they say, may the Force be with you. It's a classic phrase.
They do.
And to me, the may the Force be with you line that's said amongst the rebels isn't said until Leia, and she says it because of Ben and because of Luke.
I mean, you could argue that, and this is kind of getting into the meta of things, but like you could argue that the rebels are like Bail Organa,
that's
like Leia's stepfather.
Yeah,
like he presumably interacted with the Jedi a bunch.
He's buddies with Yoda, and he's buddies with Obi-Wan.
Like so, I feel like the concept of the Force, it makes more sense that it's there among the rebels, just because some of the higher ups have had involvement with the Jedi in the last 20-ish years. It would be an interesting idea if, like, the Empire had kind of eradicated the idea of the Force.
And was trying to, like, silence those that still talked about it.
They killed the Jedi, and that's kind of like a black mark on them. Like, even though the Jedi were declared, like, enemies of the state. Again, these are all very interesting movies that the movie could have explored and chose not to.
Right. So those are my two big things. Is I think that 7 did a really good job of avoiding the prequels existing. This movie, however, did a very horrible job of ignoring the prequels.
Yeah, I mean, it has actors...
It's closer. It's closer to the prequels, so it has to acknowledge them. But my biggest things are, like, the Force is treated like it's still a giant thing, which to me kind of ruins Han Solo's line. And 2, Vader is not supposed to be this amazing super soldier. He's supposed to just be a talented lapdog.
Yeah, and I can see where you're coming from on both those points. And... trust me, I have a lot of problems with this movie as a Star Wars movie. You know, like Vader not making puns, like, you know, the things that you just talked about. Like, I have several things where I'm like, this feels like that they don't understand where the lore is coming from and where the story should be coming from in relation to the previous movies.
Or what made us like the previous movies.
My biggest problem is this movie, to me, just doesn't work on a fundamental level. Like, the screenplay is just broken.
Right.
And it wouldn't matter if this was a Star Wars movie or not. If this was just like a heist movie or a war movie, I would have a lot of trouble caring about anybody on screen because the screenplay doesn't give us any reason to care. And like that's ultimately where this movie loses me, because the rest honestly is just fluff. Like the rest doesn't matter because the core of this movie, the framework of this movie doesn't work. So the rest just is irrelevant.
Well, and the interesting conversation to have about this too is that this is the second Star Wars movie to play it so safe that it makes it a boring movie.
Yeah.
Look at their other big property. The Marvel movies play it really safe, but I would take Doctor Strange over both this and 7. Or Civil War, I would take that over both this and 7. They're more, and I mean, yeah, sure, we know those characters more because we've known them a little longer, but...
We've talked about this before. Like, I understand that Disney wants to, they want to make money. They want to make a movie
They want to
make toys. They want to make a movie that's going to appeal to a mass audience, including China, because that's become so important nowadays. movie studios are incentivized to make movies whose screenplays don't require a lot of complex translation to get the point across.
Right.
That's why movies like Transformers or these Star Wars movies or the Marvel movies are painted in such broad strokes. It's because it's very easy for a foreign audience, i.e. China, to understand these things.
Right.
Subtlety has no place in these movies. Like subtle character interactions or like witty dialogue, not just quips, but like witty dialogue that reveals things about our characters, that has no place in giant Hollywood movies anymore because those things are hard to translate to a foreign audience.
Right.
And this movie is a prime example of everything just feeling completely weightless and without emotional content.
It feels like a fan film.
It really does. Yeah, that's a
Like-
perfect way to describe it. It feels like a high budget fan film.
Right. Especially that last bit. It just feels like hey, you want to see an awesome X-Wing fighter? Or you want to see an awesome like Battlefront cutscene? Like that's what it feels like in the end.
Yeah.
Just stop making Star Wars movies.
Final thoughts on this movie. Obviously, it's very clear what I thought. I did not like this movie at all. I feel like it's fundamentally broken on a screenplay level, regardless of the fact that it's Star Wars or not. This movie doesn't work for me.
And see, I was not looking forward to it, I think, less than you. Like, I actually was, like, thinking about not seeing it.
Yeah.
I actually thought it was okay. I don't like a lot of the stuff about it. I agree that most of the characters are boring, but, like, to be honest, I've kind of grown numb to Star Wars. I've just kind of come to the acceptance that, like, it's going to be a bit before Star Wars wants to try to make stories.
Yeah, and I agree. And this goes back to the very beginning of what I said is if you're going to make Star Wars movies, the movies have to be interesting in new and unique ways.
Right.
We're already familiar with the universe, so just the fact that you're putting us in the Star Wars universe doesn't cut it.
Well, and just we like you said in the earlier bits, like expand, like go further. Don't do 7, don't do 1, 2, and 3. Do like the Mandalorian Wars, or do like a First Contact kind of thing, or do something different.
I say this all the time, man. You can make it about whatever you want in the Star Wars universe. You just have to have a screenplay that gets you there emotionally and dramatically, and this movie doesn't do that.
Right. Well, because they need to do AT-ATs and they need to do X-Wings.
So that's our thoughts on Rogue One, a Star Wars story. We hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed me just berating this movie.
They probably won't,
But
because it did really well in the box office.
Let's be honest. That's what you came here for.
Right. They came here thinking we were going to talk highly of it.
So thank you so much for listening. We really do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you can let us know. You can find the show on Facebook and Twitter at POP RANT Radio. As always, the show is available on iTunes. If you're listening to us on there, please rate and review. It really does help out the show. We'd like to thank Major for the theme songs.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. And if you're enjoying the show, tell a friend. That really does help us out.
Yep.
Thank you guys so much for listening. And gals, thank you everyone so much for listening.
You are sexist.
And we will see you next week.
Bye.